For less than the price of a packet of crisps and 2 pints of Tetleys, you can enjoy my new novel, Take Your Medicine, linked in the description box below. What we're going to do today is look at the opening chapter to give you an idea what the novel is all about. An opening chapter has to create a sense of time and place, introduce the characters and introduce the conflict that's going to drive the plot forward. Let's take a look at how I did that. So here's the opening paragraph. Obviously it's set in Bradford in the 1970s, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with 1970s Bradford, and I imagine that's most of you, I'll put a link to some fantastic photos of it by Nick Hedges in the description box below. One of the first things that I had to decide was how strong to make the protagonist's Yorkshire accent. Well, I thought, he's pretty northern through to bone, so I went full on. I opted for non-standard grammar. Let's take a look. Mum were at other end with a fag and a postcard. It were fascinating. And in the final line, could have done better, instead of could have done better. I also went with the phonetic spelling of words like didn't for didn't, and wunt, W-U-N-T for wouldn't, and want, W-A-N-T for wasn't. As much as possible, I was trying to get the reader to hear the thoughts as the protagonist hears them, which is of course the whole point of a first-person narrator. Okay, let's read that in proper Yorkshire. I was at one end of the table with medical dictionary. Mum were at other with a fag and a postcard. The house was quiet without Dad and Sarah. The radio was on mantelpiece, but it wasn't turned on. I'd been diligent and read dictionary from cover to cover. This was my second run through. I were on H for hysteria. It were fascinating. A woman's only disease. The signs were everywhere in their tendency to cause trouble, be outraged or angry, to suffer anxiety, breathlessness or amnesia, and lose control. I couldn't think of a woman alive who didn't display such symptoms. Sarah could certainly cause trouble, and Mum would be breathless if she kept smoking at current rate. As for Grandma, she couldn't remember a damn thing when it suited her. I could see why Hippocrates got involved. Curing that would make his name forever. His wandering womb theory, though, were balmy. A bunch of infants could have done better. Physician, heal thyself, I thought. So what else does this opening paragraph reveal about the narrator? Well, the first line tells us he's reading a medical dictionary, and this is his second run through. He also mentions Hippocrates. I'm introducing his obsession with medicine and his aspiration to be a doctor. Now, being a doctor is not an unusual choice of profession for a second-generation immigrant, but here the narrator's identity is completely bound up with that idea. Obviously, the theme of medicine and healing is fundamental to the story. The title is, after all, Take Your Medicine. This character also appears to be something of a misogynist. He's reading the dictionary entry H for hysteria, which, according to him, is fascinating. These days we recognise hysteria as a fictitious disease, but it's one with a long medical history that dates back to Hippocrates and his wandering womb theory. I'm trying to introduce the narrator's bias. He says, I couldn't think of a woman alive who didn't display such symptoms. He naively reflects the misogyny of the 70s, and part of his journey is to encounter how institutions like marriage, the police and the NHS systemically oppressed females and minorities. One of the great attributes of a first-person narrator is they're allowed to be fully paid-up members of the Lunatics Club. It's what makes them so much fun, and this narrator has certainly paid his dues. His perspective on events and other characters is often twisted, warped, and willfully blind. In 3 lines, he manages to succinctly damn 3 members of his family and 3 main characters of the book, who all happen to be female. Whether his opinions are accurate or not is a different matter altogether, but I certainly had fun writing them. Well, that's the introduction to character and setting. Let's check out the conflict or setup, as it is sometimes called. The setup is the issue that drives the plot forward. Here it's introduced by a seemingly innocuous postcard the mother is reading when the narrator looks up from his medical dictionary. Mum took a drag on her fag and pushed card into the middle of the table. I leant over and picked it up. I recognised Sarah's loopy script straight away. Dear Mum and Brian, I'm having a wonderful time at Grandad's. Grandma is lovely. I'm so glad Father brought me here. I am meeting many cousins. I like Maria very much. Syra is my favourite though. She's the same age as me. Please don't worry about anything. I miss you both. I am happy here. Peace be with you, Soraya. Now, the obvious conflict lies in the name. Brian and his mum call her Sarah, but she signs the postcard Soraya. However, there is a far deeper conflict at hand, and that comes out in the ensuing conversation. She still didn't say out, she just stared at a smoke cloud. I read it again. Because she signed it, Peace be with you, Soraya. That don't mean out. She's in Pakistan for heaven's sake. Every second sentence is Peace be with you. And Dad always calls her Soraya. It's a name after all. She doesn't call herself Soraya. She might when she's surrounded by Dad's family. Yeah, she might. I could tell from her voice there was something else. It were one of them things a doctor has to pick up on. He has to pay close attention to signals from his patients. I read it a third time. She's just meeting cousins, what's wrong with that? No. Then she said, I'm so glad Father brought me here. She said it as a question, not a statement. Her voice sounded like it had been dragged through mangle. Well, I'm not surprised, I clarified. What? That she's glad. I were quite keen to go myself. Your dad brought her nowhere, Brian. He brought her. Brought her. She were repeating herself. That didn't bode well. Loss of self-control was a standard symptom of hysteria. I didn't know what I'd gotten into her. If Hippocrates were here, he'd check her womb. Sounded like she was possessed. Bought, like cattle. Chattel, actually, I corrected. I thought we'd best keep it factual. Anyway, she don't call your dad father for a start. She's done that to draw attention to the following word, bought, to make sure I didn't miss it. She wanted me to see it. It were an interesting theory and sort of wild speculation I didn't indulge in. She'd have known it were a spelling mistake, and she'd have known he wouldn't see it, and she'd have known I would. So what's she trying to say? Mum asked. I don't know. She been bought or sold? It doesn't make sense. I don't know. She thought for a while. Is that bastard trying to arrange a marriage? She asked eventually. Dad, you mean? She didn't answer. She stubbed her fag out and stared at green wall that table were pushed against. Sage, Gran called it. It looked mucky to me. Condensation streaked down it whenever rice or spuds were on boil and left a damp spot size of Grimsby. Should I go to police? She asked eventually. And what? Report a spelling mistake. It's not a spelling mistake, it's a code. It's a plea for help. They're not going to launch an investigation on account of a missing arm, Mum. Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to the story. Check out the book via the description box below. Amazon will let you read the first few pages so you can see if it's for you. And if any of your friends enjoy reading novels, then please share this video with them. And if you're a student, share it with your English teacher. Thanks ever so much.